Peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum. Hope everyone's well. Today we are continuing, of course, with Surah al-Baqarah, where we left off. I'm feeling a bit sick, so apologize for the delay. And we might end a bit earlier, but at least I want to cover some verses. So I'm going to set it up. Okay. Walaikum salam. Welcome, Brother Mahdi. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. So now our verse starting today is verse 26. Maybe as a brief recap from last time, we start with verse 21 basically onwards, where there's a transition sort of after God has given the extensive sort of introduction to the book as guidance, the party that it guides of the believers, the party that, or the wary, the muttaqin, to use the terminology, the party that is not guided of those who deny, and the party that claims to believe but is not believers, so hypocrites who also they just like outwardly pretend they follow the guidance, but God on multiple bases shows how that's not the case. Then we get to verse 21. O people, serve your Lord who created you and those before you, that you may be aware. And this, technically you could say this is the guidance summarized in one verse, in one sentence. And we talked about how this is what you must do to be aware, to be of the muttaqin, whereas the surah had opened saying this is a guidance for the muttaqin. So to be muttaqin, you must serve your Lord. Therefore, equivalently, to be guided, you must serve your Lord. Therefore, as I said, the guidance effectively can be simplified to worshiping God, your Lord who created you. If you guys haven't noticed by now, I love to simplify things to their base level because that's just how I approach things, kind of as a physicist. Plus, it's the best way that I found to approach the Quran as well. So I think we now are picking up on verse 26. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Yeah, I'll post the link in the chat. Oops, wrong button. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن الله لا يستحي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعوضة فما فوقها فأما الذين آمنوا فيعلمون أنه الحق من ربهم وأما الذين كفروا فيقولون ماذا أراد الله بهذا مثلا يضل به كثيرا ويهدي به كثيرا وما يضل به إلا الفاسقين الذين ينقضون عهد الله من بعد ميثاقه ويقطعون ما أمر الله به أن يوصل ويفسدون في الأرض أولئك هم الخاسرون. كيف تكفرون بالله وكنتم أمواتا فأحياكم ثم يميتكم ثم يحييكم ثم إليه ترجعون. Indeed, God is not shy that he strike a likeness, what of a mosquito or what is above it. So as for those who believed, then they know that it is the truth from their Lord. And as for those who denied, then they say, what did God wish by this likeness? He strays with it many and guides with it many, and not does he stray with it except the defiant. Those who unravel the pact of God, or I guess usually I would say the pledge of God here. Those who unravel the pledge of God after its binding and cut what God commanded to be connected and corrupt in the earth, those are the losers. How can you deny in God while you are dead? Then he brought you to life. Then he causes your death. Then he brings you to life. Then to him your return. So I'll give a second to reflect. I guess we actually have one more verse that you could include, but then it's kind of too big a chunk, so maybe we should just focus first on 26 and 27, which are more connected directly. So for me, the basic concept that the verse is presenting in 26 is that God is not obviously shy to strike an example. Now, why would God be shy to strike an example? Or why would someone suggest that it's unbefitting of God to strike an example? Well, for me, because God is always like he determines reality and he's precise by definition, whereas you might say that examples are sort of I don't know how to put this exactly. Examples are by nature and symbolism is by nature sort of how to put it. Inshallah, I'll think of a good way to express this. So, kind of with an example, likeness, you're saying something, there's a message communicated in an indirect way. So, God could mention a mosquito where the topic is not actually about the mosquito, but the lesson is something unrelated to the mosquito. God is just using the mosquito to make a point. That's what it implies. And to some who deny, they would be like, basically, why would God do that? Why would God just not directly tell us? Why would he speak through examples? Or why would he speak indirectly in this fashion? I think Brother Mahdi also references the famous verse about the fly. The fly is obviously different than the mosquito per se, but kind of similar in some ways. But the wording actually is very similar to this verse, because God says, "Ya ayyuhal nasu duriba lakum mathalun fastami'u laha." O people, struck for you is an example or a likeness, so listen to it. As here he said, God is not shy to strike a likeness with the same wording. So, but to summarize again, so when God is using a likeness, he's communicating to us indirectly. For instance, he's talking about a mosquito or a fly, where the message is not about the mosquito or the fly, it's something else. And to some people, especially I would say deniers based on this verse, they would find this unconvincing. Why is God just not going to directly speak to them? It's kind of similar and parallel to later when they say, why does God not bring us a sign? Why does God not convince us basically in a direct fashion? Or why can we not see God? And the reason to mention this is because this is like obviously this book of guidance is entirely composed of ayat, which means signs, the verses, which are called signs basically, to translate literally. Therefore, all of the book's message in some way or another is symbolic in nature. There's ideas which have a meaning to them. And if you are unable to like contemplate on meaning and interpret a sign and think about what it indicates, what the implications are, then you're not going to be able to use this book whatsoever, because you're going to be like this. You're going to be like, what did God wish by this example? And then another mention of guidance, which is the key concept in this surah. He guides with it many and strays with it many, or reverse that order, but strays with it many and guides with it many, and he does not stray except the defiant. So it kind of parallels even the start of the surah. You could go back where it says, that is the book in which there is no doubt, guidance for the wary. So we talked about how effectively the idea is that the book guides whoever is receptive and careful and cautious and aware in their approach. But it does not guide those who are just rebuffing, rejecting, if you are unable to contemplate, to consider, to be receptive, to ponder, whatever the case, then it won't guide you. And the similar thing for examples, which is what the current verse is talking about. If you are unable to consider the implication behind signs that God mentions, then you won't be guided. You will go astray, rather than, like he says, he guides astrays many and guides many with it. And it's not random, obviously. Then God clarifies immediately, it's not random who goes astray and who is guided. Rather, the ones who go astray are the defiant, which makes perfect sense in the context of examples, because the defiant would be the ones who are unwilling to consider, and they are sort of skeptical when it comes to examples, the signs, the guidance. They're skeptical, not even neutrally, but they're skeptical out of not wanting to obey, which is what defiance entails.
So isn't it about criticizing the book in general?
Meaning?
Out of the desire to rebel, out of being rebellious, criticizing whatever is given in the book.
Yeah, mashallah, that's a fair point. Just how they do with the examples, like what did God wish by this example? It's not out of a genuine lack of understanding. It's more like a lack of willingness to understand.
Or maybe a lack of submission, in the sense that they are not taking what God gave them.
Yeah, that works too. It works really nicely.
Yeah, peace, everyone.
Peace.
I think it is also to do with like them like mocking, and like Allah's teaching them that like if you continue to mock, like you're not going to be guided. Like a mockery is the beginning to like not believing in it in the Quran, is something that I learned from this.
And then verse 27 expands further upon this party who it does not guide, who are defiant, meaning disobedient, those who unravel the pledge of God after its binding, and cut what God commanded to be connected, and corrupt in the earth. Those are the losers, or the lost. So God gives three more qualities. Basically breaking the pledge of God after contracting it, cutting what God commanded to be connected, and corrupting in the earth. These ones are a bit vague, I would say, but they are recurrent in the Quran. Again, so for me, I connect them all back to the same idea, really. So the pledge of God, at its core level, is the pledge to worship Him alone. So they break this after contracting it. Just like, for instance, later we have the example of Bani Israel. They're given a covenant to not worship except God and to do good to the parents, and etc., etc. It has a few conditions, but the first one is to not worship any except God. Then they broke this covenant, and God says they said basically to effect, we heard and we disobeyed. And they, for instance, for one example, worship the calf. and refuse to enter the land, etc., etc. Many examples. Then cutting what God, so I guess breaking the pledge, kind of obvious. Cutting what God commanded to be connected. So this one can have a few meanings possibly, but on the primary level, God has commanded worship to be entirely connected to Him. He has commanded basically that we not split anything, like we not split our loyalty. We do not split, for instance, our sacrifice to multiple entities, sacrifice some things to God, some things to partners. That's an example of cutting what God commanded to be connected. It's kind of in the root of what shirk means, which is partnership, if you will. This idea of shirk automatically cuts what should be connected to God. So for instance, when you sacrifice, for me is a clear example, every sacrifice is supposed to be for God, but if you do partial sacrifice for God and partial for partners, then you have already cut what God commanded to be connected.
You know, I feel like with this verse, right? Like this verse is actually the demise of the mushrikeen. Like what happened with them is that they broke the treaty, and it led to them. It's because they wanted to cause corruption in the land, and then they became the losers in the end.
Nice, mashallah. That's a cool connection, actually.
Yeah, and how I see this verse as well is that like it's that these people they felt free to do that. They felt like, yeah, we can just cut it off and and cut what commanded God in it, that be connected. Um yeah, the commands of God in the Quran, it's like things that they have to do. Like it's like such an obligation. It's like something that's like there's like, as in, obviously there's freedom of religion, but in a way it's like no choice, like, you know.
And similarly, corrupting in the earth, at its core, actually also connects to shirk, to associating partners to God and enacting that, basically, because, for instance, God says that if there had been multiple entities besides Him, the heavens and the earth and whoever is within them would have been corrupted. So this actual unexclusive loyalty to God at its core is the source of corruption. Because if everything was done in accordance to what God commanded and in obedience to God, there would be no corruption.
Yeah, and there's like some of the other corruptions they were doing significantly was like burying the girls, the children, and um maybe they were also like people who maybe slept around and like maybe did it like extreme. Like I think there was a verse that mentioned that like in their pagan tradition, like they used to kill children or something.
Yes. Specifically daughters. If I recall correctly, because it says Surah 6 anyway. It's the one لقد خسر الذين قتلوا أولادهم سفها بغير علم وحرموا ما رزقهم الله. Already have lost those who killed their children foolishly without knowledge and forbade what God had provided them. And then God defines here, though, that those are the losers or the lost, al-khasirun, which is a very loaded word which connects to guidance and astrayness. So astrayness is parallel slightly to this word. So astrayness is to be lost, like lost in the woods, lost where you don't know how to find your destination, you're lost in the desert, etc., etc. And khasirun is to be losers, to be a loser, or to be lost, like where you can never come back, that sort of loss. Or like, for instance, if you dropped your phone and it sank to the bottom of the ocean, you would say, my phone's lost. On a boat, I mean. So it's kind of like, maybe you could say the end, this is a bit speculative, but you could say it's like the end state of being astray, where astray is a sort of being lost directionally, not knowing, not having any idea where to go, how to get to your destination. And al-khasirun is indicative of being truly lost and having no way back, no way to find a person, or the person being gone. But anyway, reinforcing the idea that those who are like being skeptical when it comes to God's signs and examples are ironically the same people who don't want to follow God's covenant, who don't want to do what God has commanded, basically, and who want to corrupt the earth rather than be righteous and correct it. Any thoughts related or other points from verse 26, 27?
No, not from me. Yeah.
Then I think we'll do two more, inshallah. 29. كيف تكفرون بالله وكنتم أمواتا فأحياكم ثم يميتكم ثم يحييكم ثم إليه ترجعون والذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا ثم استوى إلى السماء فسواهن 7 سماوات وهو بكل شيء عليم. How can you, denying God while you were dead? So he brought you to life. Furthermore, he causes your death. Furthermore, he brings you to life. Furthermore, to him you are returned. He is the one who created for you what is in the earth collectively. Furthermore, he evened to the sky. So he evened them 7 heavens, and he of everything is knowing. So obviously verse 28 presents basically that it's incoherent, as if to say you cannot deny God, given that you were already dead and he brought you to life. Then a few progressions, but just focusing on that one first. It would be like you doubt God's ability to resurrect you when he's already resurrected you, because you were not alive, yet he brought you to life. Then he also causes your death, which is to say that you cannot escape him. You just because he brought you to life now, you don't live eternally, meaning like I said, I guess you can't escape him, but then he brings you to life. Furthermore, he brings you to life. So actually this one kind of aligns with both the first life and the first death that was described. I mean, like second death, I guess, just to be technical. So what I'm trying to say here is he brought you to life from being dead, which is our current life. So he's already demonstrated his ability to bring the dead to life as it concerns you. Secondly, he causes your death, meaning you cannot escape him. Then he brings you to life, and to him you are returned. So this second bringing to life, it actually just follows from the fact that he brought you to life and caused your death already. Meaning, well, the first time he brought you to life already demonstrated his ability to do so again. The first time he caused your death already demonstrated you cannot escape him, that you return to him basically, and you don't stay where you are. So furthermore, he brings you to life, furthermore, to him you are returned. It actually just logically follows from the fact of your first life and inevitable death.
I think like another thing you could also say is that like Allah is trying to convince them that look, that the fact that you came from, you know, a small seed and then you became a human, like that is a sign of like, okay, God's existence. Like, how can you deny when like, look, you came from this and then you became this? How can that happen? And then it's like saying that, okay, yes, you will die, but again, God is just saying that, look, in this revelation, I'm telling you that you going from a seed to a human it happened, and it can only be by God. And so why do you think it's ridiculous to think that you can come again after death? And verse 29 is basically Allah showing like how there's no disorder in the world, like how, you know, the heavens, they don't smash on top of you, it's like seven above, and Allah's showing his perfect order, and he's like basically trying to awaken the mind of the Jahil people.
Yeah, mashallah, good summary. And I would say that if you think about it, in verse 28, nobody would dispute that they were dead and came to life. Maybe they'll dispute that God did it, but in effect, that's irrelevant. So God did it, whether or not you acknowledge. Anyway, so that you were dead, you came to life. Everyone agrees. Then you will die. Inevitably, everyone agrees. Now the point of disagreement would come, of deniers would come in the next step. Then he brings you to life, then to him you are returned. But that's kind of the point here, I find, that God is saying that this is simply implied by the premise you already accepted, that you are dead and came to life, and your death comes inevitably. Just by accepting this premise, which everyone accepts, the next is implied. Because the first time he demonstrated that he can bring you to life from death, the second time he demonstrated that you cannot escape him, therefore that means he's going to bring you alive from death and you will not escape him. Furthermore, he brings you to life. Furthermore, to him you are returned, meaning you do not escape him. So he's saying you accept premise one. Everyone accepts premise one. Therefore, everyone must accept premise two. Therefore, the question is, how can you deny God?
You also notice how, like, in the Quran, right, it mentions like these are signs for people who give thought, right? That clearly shows you that at the time of the Prophet, really the people were just jahil, and the belief was based on like awakening the mind because these people were stupid, right? So I think that like these verses are, um, it's like really mind opening to them, like really gets them thinking, like, no one spoke to them like this. It's like the great God that they abandoned is like awakening, you know. Um, yeah, like yeah, it's like showing the perfect order of Allah, um, and that this is a sign, whether or not you accept the Quran, that He does exist and He is, He's there.
Yeah. And then similar to what you had said, Brother Zardius, like 29, after considering your creation, God points out that he created things way bigger than you, kind of, you could say. He created for you whatever is on the earth collectively. Furthermore, he leveled to this heaven and leveled them as 7 heavens, meaning he's like proportioned, whatever, a cosmos above you and beyond your comprehension in its scale and scope, while knowing everything. Everything was done precisely, knowingly, just how on the earth everything is perfectly balanced for you, from the water cycle, from the elements that he placed on earth, covering everything in their proper proportions, from like any like aspect of analysis, plate tectonics, continental shelves, like fish in the ocean as provision. We could literally give examples for hours. Yet, this perfectly proportioned, like perfect creation around you on earth is like overshadowed by another perfect creation, vastly greater, vastly wider, vastly more impressive above the earth. Yet the human goes all the way back to his small self and thinks as to how will God resurrect him when he's already done way more impressive than that.
How do you understand ثم استوى إلى السماء?
Well, for example, the primary way I understand it is like
See, because it's the same as ثم استوى على العرش, and also the same root as sawa, or the same or equal, identical.
right. So here's an example. Verse 28, Surah 15. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي خَالِقٌ بَشَرًا مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ مِنْ حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونٍ فإذا سويته ونفخت فيه من روحي فقعوا له ساجدين. So when I have proportioned him, leveled him, or evened him, so he's saying like he's going to create him from clay, basically, to effect. And he's saying when I have evened him, meaning proportioned the clay or his form, then fall to him in prostration. So similar here, it's effectively primarily for me pointing out the proportioning, the perfection of the creation of the heaven, his proportioning of them as 7 heavens, rather than his position, at least primarily. But then, of course, you could say istawa ala al-arsh is a similar expression. He leveled upon the arsh, upon the throne, you could say. But similarly, arsh is also the root meaning of construction, something raised, which is exactly how the skies are raised. So actually, if I find primarily it has the same meaning, where he proportioned his creation. But then secondarily, you could say that he presides over it, something like this. I think that's also valid.
Oh, then see, he created for you everything around. What is it? Whatever is on the went on to, or then he turned to the creation of the sky or leveling the sky, and then he went on to arranging the sky. Would that be fair? And
Yeah,
then
also
contextually made them 7 heavens.
I don't think it's chronological here, per se, because of the use of thumma, which thumma can be thereafter, but more so also furthermore. So he can also separate a greater idea. So he did this, furthermore, greater than this, beyond this, he did this. And that's how I take it here. Because it's, for me, it's not communicating that he created for you what's on the earth, then he made the heaven. For me, it's communicating he created for you. Like first he talks about your creation, then the creation of the earth, then greater than that, the heaven and the 7 heavens.
What if you take it as like God made the earth and then the heaven already existed, and then but in this time after the earth, God just made it that earth into 7.
That heaven?
Yeah, as in the sky like existing before the earth, then like after Allah made the earth, the heaven already existed, but like he sectioned it into like 7 parts after the earth. I don't know.
After the existence of the earth.
Yeah, not that the heaven didn't exist
I get
before
you,
the
yeah.
earth. Yeah.
The 7 differentiation occurred after.
Yeah, but not the making of the heaven.
Yeah, basically the atmosphere created around the Earth as the planet. So the arrangement of the atmosphere.
For the atmosphere, I could kind of see it. For the cosmos in general, no, personally, but maybe the Arabic allows for both ways. I think it does allow for both ways due to the utility of thumma.
So yeah, basically there was the earth, and then the space was leveled or arranged into seven layers, or seven atmospheres, seven spheres actually, semi-sphere.
It's also interesting how the previous verse kind of gives an example with regards to thumma that we're discussing, where God says, كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا فَأَحْيَاكُمْ ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ. So he starts with fa, which means like then or so. You were dead, so he alived you. But then instead of continuing with so, fa, he goes to thumma. So he alived you, furthermore he deadens you, furthermore he alives you, furthermore to him you are returned. So each time it's not just thereafter, even though the chronology here is clearly correct. You can take it chronologically, and it is chronological, but it's also pointing out greater than that. So he brought you to life, and beyond that, he caused your death, and beyond that, he brings you again to life, and more importantly, to him your return. Yeah.
By the way, when's the next summary? Yeah.
Summary? Good question. We have now the story of Adam coming up. I would say maybe after this story is done, so after verse 39.
Okay.
Inshallah. And since we're at time, I'll just ask if there's any final point, but we do have to conclude.
No, for me, no, but thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it on Thursday, right? Thursday?
Yeah, inshallah. 2 days from now, same time. Hope to see you guys there. Thank you for being here. Peace to everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much.
Peace.